super exciting for me to embark on something brand new. But just remember, I'm just a nerdy dude from the UK, so I'm only presenting my findings on Amapiano from this week. My main goal is to bridge the gap between the many FL tutorials that I've seen and translate it for my Ableton community. If you're an Amapiano pro and you want to clue me up in the comments to some of the details that I've missed, please do, because I'd like to continue to grow alongside you. And do your own research too. I've listed in the description some artists and YouTube educators that are killing it in the Amapiano space. But if you're still with me, let's dive into it. Okay, so Amapiano. It's a subgenre of house music born out of South Africa. It's been getting a lot of spotlight on TikTok as of late, and it's been highlighted over the last year or so through some amazing boiler room events too. It's a little bit bigger than the projects that we've looked at from the last couple of episodes, so why don't we just dive straight into things. If you're a member of the Patreon, I tried to keep this project as Ableton stock focused as possible, so you can delve through it without worrying about third-party plugins. But we are going to start with an audio layer, and if you're not a member of Splice, then you can just record your own shaker. But you'll be hard pushed to find an Amapiano track that doesn't include the shaker here. I've just got a Cashmere shaker and I've really EQ'd that and kept it to the high end of the frequency spectrum, so there's plenty of space left in my track. I've even added a line delay to set it a little bit wider. Notice how quiet that shaker is as well. Now the first thing that I added after this was the drum rack. Your drums are going to be fairly Afrobeat focused. It means that a lot of the accents are going to land on the offbeat. So what have we got here? Well, I've got a kick, but that was the last thing that I added. I started with this 808 snare, a second 808 snare with a slightly different tone, some congas, and percussion. Now all of these sounds pretty much I've added a separate EQ to, so they fit into their own space, but really that's all of the processing that I'm doing inside the drum rack. All of these sounds, by the way, are found over in drums and drum hits. I did make use of velocity, as you can see through some of the notes here. As I mentioned, the kick sample was the last thing that I added in. I made sure to roll off any subby frequencies and just boost a little bit of air there. Do forgive me, this is the only sample that I dragged in. This is from the Comma Rebby sample pack, and it was just because it was a really nice subtle kick that I could add to this beat. We don't want it to be the focus because we're going to come back to the log drum later on. We're going to add that to our shaker. Every now and then I just have a little snare fill here. You can see that velocity takes effect here as well. And then we move on. I've tried to couple this with a recording of my own voice here, just to add that kind of Afro beat and humanistic feel. I'm EQing my vocals to get rid of any muddiness and adding a little bit of glue compression to keep those vocals nice and tight. Erosion's gonna add a little bit of noise and a bit crushing effect to my vocals. I've also pitched them down a semitone. With that erosion, it sounds like this. And if you wanted to make it even more exaggerated, you could just bring that erosion up. You can see that I've used capped-in chords for this chord progression, but this is what it looks like if you just want to copy it. I've used Ableton stock upright piano for this, and the sound is quite bright. Just using 3 chords. But as we get into the beat, I've also got a melody playing in the right hand of the piano here. Let's put those two together. Super nice, right? Now I have processed those pianos a little bit. I'm just using the preset gentle limiter, but the only change I've made is pulling that ratio down to 2 and then a little bit of EQ8 there. I've got this wobbly rhythm noise pad here, and I just wanted kind of a tremolo, monotonous note. One of the notes that plays time and time again in this track is E, so I'm just playing a long legato E here. As I said, stretching out that attack there and making sure that I have a nice long decay. Rolling off some of the lows because again, we want to keep all of that space for our log drum and our other melodic elements. So let's listen to those few elements together. This could make a wonderful introduction to your Amapiano tune straight off the rip. Alright, let's get to the log drum, which I'm sure you're excited about. I've got 3 presets here for you. One is sample based, one is a third-party VST, and you'll be happy to know one is made in Ableton. I hadn't yet seen a tutorial on YouTube of how to make the log drum from scratch in Ableton, so I made one in Wavetable. If you want to see a short on how to recreate it, then just click in the top right of this video. But if you don't care for cookery book style tutorials, then just head over to my Patreon where you can download the preset. Shout outs to OY Productions who put a free log drum sample pack together, and I'll include that in the description below. Really came in clutch in this particular tutorial. I've chosen one of the log drum samples and just coupled that with the saturator and a little bit of EQ8 and the limiter so we're not peaking. This is the pattern that I drew into the piano roll, but just bear in mind that our sample isn't in the key of C, which is why you're seeing it occur on these notes, which is contradictory to the rest of the piano roll notes that you'll see in this project. Now from here, I just added the saturator, EQ8 and limiter. Just adds a little bit more aggression and helps pull it out of small speakers. As I mentioned, I hadn't seen a YouTube tutorial on how to create the log drum, so I got really hung up on trying to create that sound. That pattern's drawn in exactly the same, but in the right key, of course. And you can see here, this is Wavetable working away. And then the same saturator, EQ, and limiter presets. The cool thing about having it in Wavetable as opposed to a sample is I can now mess with the FM to make it darker or brighter. The filter cutoff can do the same as well. And then if I increase the attack, we get some really cool dubstep sounds, which is just happy coincidence, really. I'm really digging this. Like I said, you can download it from the Patreon or check out my short if you want to create it yourself. Now, this isn't a sponsor, but something that I was really happy to find was the log drum VST, and this came from producer sources. It was about $20 at the time of recording this video. I've played this one in slightly different, and it sounds like this. We get a ton of presets in here, from just the basic sounds to evolve sounds, to real sounds which I can see myself using in future. But if you pitch it up, it becomes a little bit more kalimba-esque. The only thing that I don't like about this plugin, I know it's not a review, is just kind of the layout. It's kind of hard to find where things are. I was messing with the saturator and not hearing a difference, and it turns out you've got to hit this tiny little button here. You also can't blend the sounds. There's obviously a few different samples going on, and I'd like to be able to just blend those sounds and mix and match them as you do in some contact libraries. It's also kind of confusing that you can sometimes hit these notes here or just press this button, which has gas come out of it, but I don't know what it does there. So some of it's a bit confusing, but the presets are phenomenal. So that's what I've used for this particular project. And you can see that I've got another preset down here. It's a slightly different sound. I've added the auto filter that has a little bit of automation here, low pass right up to open up that instrument. I'm adding a very fast auto pan, and it gives this effect. So we hear that in Amapiano quite a lot. Let's combine those sounds. And then let's play that with the rest of my beats. Now don't go anywhere just yet, because just leaving your track like this is going to keep it sounding quite empty. We're going to add a few more complementary elements, but very first, a quick message. This episode is of course sponsored by my friends DistroKid. With DistroKid, they make it so easy to get your music on all the streaming platforms, and when you sign up, you can upload as many songs as you want. It's unlimited. You might also want to be aware that if you're creating covers this Christmas season, it's really easy to generate cover licenses with DistroKid. That means you can get on those holiday playlists on Spotify, boost your monthly listeners, and not have to worry about any demonetizations or strikes. It's super easy to do with DistroKid. All you need to do is check that box that says it's a cover song and that all the music is yours. And that's it, you're good to go. If you want to join me on DistroKid, then make sure you use the link in the description below. You'll get 7% off your first year. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so from here I had a track that definitely vibed, but I just wanted to complement those sounds with some new instruments. The first thing that I wanted to add was the ample guitar. You can see that I've got two settings going on here at the bottom. This legato note is going to keep the guitar more open, and this is going to mute those notes. And you can see that occurring in the ample sound VST in the bottom left. Open and then muted. So this is my pattern at the top. We've got a little bit of delay. And this is just going to play in and amongst my drums. We're adding a little bit of Ableton reverb, EQ8, a line delay, and auto pan. That delay is being sent to a return down here, return B, but it's just got the filter option turned on. Now don't worry if you don't have the ample sound plugin. We've also got the guitar open right here as well, which will sound like this. With a little bit of EQ, delay as we saw before, we can get it sounding similar, but there's nothing like those real guitar samples from Ample Sound. That's why they're my favorite and you see them feature a lot on the channel. If you're downloading this project from the Patreon, I'll include the guitar open version. We've also got some brass, again, just from Ableton's packs. Now this is being processed with a little bit of compression and the EQ8, just to touch down some of those peaky notes. And we've got two types of brass. We've got one on the top that sounds like this. Slightly less reverb with this brass. And then underneath, slightly more reverb, a little bit brighter, short staccato notes. This highlighted region is panned to a little bit to the left. And then this highlighted region at the bottom is panned to the right. Playing those together. Again, everything on the offbeat, very Afrobeat inspired. Now there's a video on TikTok that went fairly viral in the Afrobeat space, and it looks like this. And I really dug those sharp synth sounds. So I wanted to create something fairly similar, but in the background of my Amapiano track. So we've got something that sounds like this. At the end here, I'm automating just a little bit more reverb with this cathedral preset. And then underneath, all I've done is drenched that sharp synth in reverb, frozen it, flattened it in place, and pitched it up. And that's going to better lead into my instrument. And then finally at the very bottom, I've just taken some vocals from Splice, and that's just to give it a little bit of an undertone, a little bit of a vibe, but it's not supposed to be a main character. I've done some mid-side EQ in here to separate it from the rest of my track and not get it too bogged down and muddy. So the mids are staying around kind of the 1K to 500 mark, and the sideband stuff is being boosted in the high end. I've also got a line delay very wide to set it away from all my basses, kicks and snares, and a little bit of reverb in the middle there. Sounds like this. You can probably hear a little bit of delay, and that is being sent on the last syllable to my final delay return on D there. So all my complementary elements are going to sound like this. Now this can become quite a lot, so something else that you might want to consider is grouping this project, adding a side chain inside this group here, and then side chaining that to the kick so it ducks a little bit and bounces throughout your mix, but you don't have to. And that pretty much concludes it for what I've learned in the Amapiano space. You want to make sure that you're using kind of that Afrobeat inspired drums, keeping things on the backbeat, lots of kind of triplet grooves or triplet fills, and making sure that you're keeping it relatively chilled and down tempo, apart from that log drum. When that comes in sort of a quarter to halfway through the tune, you want to make sure that it's very present and gives a whole new vibe to the track, kind of has that house inspired bass line. Let's listen to everything together. So that pretty much concludes it for our Amapiano tutorial. What do you think of the genre? Is it as new to you as it is to me? Are you going to try and make more tracks like it? I definitely am, so do keep me clued up to the Amapiano producers, artists that you're listening to, and which direction my ears should point next. We're going to be back with some new content next week, and anything that you might want to find out is in the description below. Thank you so much for swinging by, and I'll see you next time.